Transfers between containers of group of fields. So here we can see an example of a process, and not every line of the group of fields has to be displayed in each one of these forms, only the ones that meet certain conditions throughout the process. For example, here we have a request form where we do want to display all the group of fields, all the lines of the group of fields. Here we have an approval manager that only needs to see certain lines, the lines that need approval. And here we have the warehouse manager that only needs to see the lines that meet some other conditions. We'll see it now in a moment. So first of all, we have a performer who launches the process and adds to the group of fields several lines. For example, a laptop, an iPhone, another laptop, and a monitor. Okay, once these lines have been created, this transfer system task is going to grab from the group of fields all the lines that meet a certain condition and drop them into a container that's called pending approval. And the condition in this case is that the price needs to be greater than 100 in order to be displayed in this container. So in this case, the approval manager opens a form, and since this container is being applied in his form, the only lines that he's going to be seeing are these three. So he can see the first line, he can see the second line, and he can see the third line. But this fourth line, he doesn't even see it because he doesn't need to approve lines that are under 100. Now, this performer decides what she's going to do in each one of, with each one of these requests that were added in this star message event. So she says, okay, I approve the laptop, I do not approve the iPhone, and I do approve this other laptop. Okay, then the flow goes through this other transfer system task, and this transfer system task has another condition. It says, now I need to move to a container that's called pending delivery, all the lines with a price that are lower than 100, and besides all the lines that have been approved. So this transfer system task drops into this container all the lines that have been approved. So here we can see there's two lines that have been approved, the HP laptop and the Dell laptop. Okay, we can see them here. And besides, it also adds all the lines that are lower than 100. So the LG monitor also is going to pop up into this container. So basically, what is the warehouse manager going to see? All the lines that have been approved, and besides this line, even though it hasn't been approved because it's under 100. So what these system tasks are doing, they're moving the lines that meet these conditions, and the conditions are set within the system task during the execution of the process. They're evaluated, and based on those conditions, the lines are being displayed in one container or another one. So here we can see this process that we've designed. It has a star message event where someone adds some lines. Once they've added these lines, this container has to move the lines. This system task has to move the lines to different containers. So we have all the lines in a group of fields, and we're going to divide them into different containers that are called low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Afterwards, this gateway is going to send the flow always in this direction, and it's going to send the flow through this other outlet if there is lines in the container that's called low risk. It's going to send the flow in this direction if there is lines in the container high risk, and it's going to send the flow in this other direction if there is lines in the medium risk container. So let's see how this system task is configured. So the first thing we have to do is select the type of system task, transfer, and then we have to start creating transfers. I'm going to show these transfers already configured, but then I'm going to show you guys how to configure them from scratch. So first of all, here we can see there's an order. Sometimes, not in this case, but in some scenarios, it's important to indicate a certain order. So I'm going to enter here, and we can see first it tells you, okay, from where do you want to extract the lines or where are the lines that you want to evaluate? So you go to the group of fields called credit request, and you want to evaluate the lines that are in this group of fields. And where do you want to display them? In another container that's called low risks. Okay, So we're evaluating this container or this group of fields, and we're displaying the lines that are going to meet the conditions that we set down here in another container that's called credit requests, low risk. Okay, so low risk is the name of the container where I want these lines to be displayed. Then here we have a transfer method, substitutive, additive, and cleanup. We're going to see this later. We can group the lines. We're also going to see this later. We can indicate that we want lines that have already been transferred to be transferred again. We can delete the transferred lines from the source. This option is disactivated because when we select a group of fields as the source, it's not possible to delete the transferred lines. You can also set up a maximum number of lines to be transferred to this destination or a maximum number of lines in the destination. So we could say the maximum number of lines in the destination is going to be 10. Then it's only going to transfer 10 lines each time the flow goes through the system task. But if we say maximum number of lines in destination 1, if we have to move lines from the source container to the destination, if it already had one, it's going to remove it and it's going to transfer the new line. And then again, we're still going to have 1. So it's like saying only 1 line fits in the destination, or 10, or as many as we want. And down here, we're going to set up the conditions. We already know how to set up conditions, but the interesting thing here is we're setting up conditions with the content of the columns of the group of fields. So here we can see we clicked on create condition. We selected the column risk level. It's a simple selection field, and we said it has to be equal to low risk. If it meets this condition and it meets this other condition where the field analysis status is equal to pending analysis, if it meets both of these conditions, then the lines have to be displayed in the low risk container. Okay. Now let's say I want to create it from scratch. I click on create transfer. I select the source, or where do I want to evaluate, where do I have the lines that I want to evaluate? And here I could say, okay, in the whole group of fields. Where do we want to leave them? In low risk. So they're going to be displayed in low risk. Right now, if I click save, basically it would just grab all the content of the group of fields and drop it into this container and display it in this container. But I'm going to set up a condition, and I'm going to say, well, my condition is that the risk level, it's a simple selection field. Oops, I didn't click on it correctly. Here we go. Risk level has to be equal to low risk. And I'll save and exit. Okay, now only the lines that meet this condition are going to be displayed in this container. Now that I showed you how to configure the system task, I want to go through all the little details to make sure we understand how the transfer is going to be affected by each one of these options. So the first option I want to explain is one that says transfer method substitutive. So what happens if I mark this option? I have a source container and a destination container. And here we have a condition. It says the amount has to be greater than 0 or empty in order to pass to the destination container. So what's going to happen when the flow goes through the system task is going to empty the destination. So it's going to take off all of these lines from the destination. Okay. Once it's emptied, then the new lines that meet the conditions are going to be moved from the source to the destination. So as it says here, all the lines that meet the conditions are going to be transferred from the origin to the destination, which is only going to contain the newly transferred lines. So all the old lines are going to disappear. Now, the transfer has been performed and only the new lines are in the destination. Now we go to the next option called additive, and here we have a different condition. It says all the lines which quantity is lower than 3 or is equal to empty. How many lines meet this condition? Only 2 of them, because 5 is greater than 3, 4 is greater than 3. Okay, then only this line that says 1 and this other line that's empty should pass to the destination container. But here it says that the transfer is going to be additive. So what's going to happen in this case? First of all, the only lines that are going to be passed from the source to the destination are the lines that are not already in the destination. Okay, so if it's additive, we might have lines at the destination, and even though there's certain lines that meet the condition, for example, this one, it says mobile phone X50. It's already in the destination. so this line wouldn't be moved to the destination. When the system task is triggered, this line that does meet the conditions, and besides it is not already in the destination, this one would be moved from the source to the destination. Now the next option here is called cleanup. It's only going to appear when I select the same group of fields in the region and in the destination. And what's going to happen? This option is going to be marked and I can't take it off. It's the only option that I can use if I've selected a group of fields, the source and in the destination. Now what would happen if I leave this like this, same group of fields and source and destination, and the flow goes through the system task? It's going to delete all the lines that meet the condition. For example, here we can see we have in the destination group of fields, 4 lines. Obviously, in the source group of fields, it's the same one. We have the exact same 4 lines. And we've said that we want to transfer all the lines that meet a certain condition. For example, the amount is greater than 600. Here we can see the only line that meets the conditions is this one here that says 600. Actually, I think the condition here, it should be greater or equal than 600. So this line does meet the conditions. When the flow goes through this system task, what's going to happen? It's going to delete all the lines that don't meet the conditions. So basically, we're cleaning all the content of the group of fields. These are going to disappear. And this is not the same as cleaning a container because let's say we want to delete lines from a container. That's not a problem because we know they're still in the group of fields. A container is just a view. It's a view of the information that we have in the group of fields. But if we select a group of fields in the source and in the destination, and we select this option and we set up some conditions, all the lines that don't meet the conditions are going to be totally deleted with no possibility of recovery. So we have to take this into account. It's important that we configure this correctly and we don't just delete all the lines that we have in a group of fields because later on we're not going to be able to recover that information. Besides, we could also use the option substitutive if we want to clean lines in a container of a group of fields. This option here that says group by is going to allow us to create batches within a group of fields. For example, if we have several items, as in this scenario, that I can group by a certain concept, for example, all the lines that have the same item selected, I could create a batch with all of those lines. In order to do that, I'd click here on group by, and this option is going to allow us to transfer a batch of lines based on the information of any of these columns. So when I enter, it's going to display all the different columns. So I can use them to create a batch. For example, I could say the company or a phone or the performer or the item. Okay, so here I could select, for example, the column item, and then I could also set up some conditions. What would happen? First of all, it's going to create a batch. When the flow goes through the system task, it's going to create a batch according to whatever column I selected here. In this case, requested items. So I said, okay, I'm going to create batches based on this column called requested items. So here it finds the first batch, it creates this batch, and then it's going to move the lines from the source to the destination based on this batch. And obviously based also on the conditions. So if I would say, okay, this is the first batch, but I only want to transfer the lines that are greater than, with amount greater than 100, then it would only move one line to the destination. But in this case, let's say there's no conditions here, so it just grabs all the content of this batch and drops it into the destination container. I could set up a loop in the process if I want to process the information by batches. For example, let's say I'm in a warehouse and I want someone to deliver the items based on batches. For example, first, I want him to be able to see in his task all the boxes that are full of smartwatches, for example. So I want him to take care of those batches. I only want him to work with smartwatches. Then he finishes his task. I create a loop. The flow goes back to his task. But the next time he sees the next batch of items, maybe instead of smartwatches, maybe he can only see the boxes full of tablets or keyboards or whatever the concept I want to use, or monitors. So each time I send him the task, he's going to be seeing different information. It might even be the same task, but with batches of the same type of lines based on a certain criteria, like for example here, the type of item. Now we're going to see another option down here that's called transferred lines. And we have two options. We have the option yes and the option no. Let's say I mark the option yes. So this means that all the lines that have been previously transferred from this container, this source origin container, to this destination container, they're going to be transferred again if they meet the conditions. For example, here it says, these two are the lines that have already been transferred previously in the past. Now, we want to transfer the lines from the origin to the destination. The four lines meet the conditions. So when the flow goes through the system task, it's going to move all four lines to the destination. Here we have another scenario where we've indicated that we don't want to transfer the already transferred lines. In this scenario, even though the four lines met the conditions, since these two lines have already been transferred previously, then when the transfer system task moves the lines from the source to the destination, it only moves these two because the other two were previously transferred. This is useful when we're working with different loops in a process. For example, we might have a loop where we want to transfer all the lines based on a certain criteria, as we mentioned before. But the next time we transfer the next batch of lines, we don't want the system task to transfer lines that have already been transferred. Here we have another option that says delete transferred lines. If we mark the option yes, it means that all the lines that have been moved from the source container to the destination are going to be deleted from the source. This is not possible when we've selected a group of fields in the source, in the origin. So here, for example, we have a group of fields, so this option is disabled. We can't say that we do want to delete transferred lines because it's not possible. Remember, the only way we can delete lines from a source container is selecting from the source group of fields, is selecting the same group of fields here in the destination, and then the cleanup option is marked. But in this case, if we select a group of fields and a container here, this option is disabled. If we select a container here and another container here, then this option would be activated and we can mark yes or no. And here we can see if we mark yes, that means this line, that means the conditions, is going to be moved to the destination and is going to be deleted from the source. And in this other example, we can see it says delete transferred lines no. So in this case, we're going to copy it from the source to the destination, but it's not going to be removed from the source. Even though it met the condition and it was moved to the destination, it still appears here in the source.